My name is Clara Hayes. I'm 32 years old, and I'm a freelance event designer. The email landed in my inbox on a Tuesday morning, nestled between a client invoice and a newsletter about sustainable floral arrangements. The subject line was chillingly simple, regarding the wedding. It wasn't from Bethany directly, but from her fiancé, Mark, which was the first red flag. My stomach tightened, a familiar knot forming at the base of my ribs. I'd spent countless hours helping Bethany plan her dream day, offering advice on everything from venue selection to the delicate wax seals for the invitations, a tiny olive branch emblem I'd even designed for her. I clicked it open. The message was brief, formal, and utterly devoid of warmth. Clara, after much consideration, Bethany and I have decided to keep our wedding ceremony and reception a very intimate affair. We've had to make some difficult cuts, and unfortunately, we've decided to proceed without you. We hope you understand. Uninvited. From my own sister's wedding. The words hung in the air, cold and sharp. I felt a flush creep up my neck, a mix of disbelief and a raw, stinging humiliation. My hands trembled slightly, but I didn't scream or cry. Instead, a strange, quiet resolve began to bloom inside me. They wanted an intimate affair? Fine. I would stage an intimate affair of my own, but mine would be a fairy tale, and it would be in Italy. To understand the sheer audacity of Mark's email, you need to know a bit about Bethany and me. We're 4 years apart, and for most of our lives, I'd been the diligent, responsible older sister, always cleaning up Bethany's messes or smoothing things over. Our parents, bless their hearts, tended to indulge Bethany, seeing her as the more delicate one, the artist, the dreamer. I was the practical one, the planner, the one who could always be counted on. This dynamic translated into every aspect of our lives, including the lead-up to her wedding. When Bethany announced her engagement to Mark, a sweet but somewhat passive man, I was genuinely thrilled for her. I immediately offered my services, free of charge, of course. Clara, you're an event designer. You have to help me, she gushed, pulling me into a hug. I envisioned us spending weekends poring over fabric swatches, tasting cakes, and laughing. For a while, it was like that. I helped her narrow down venues, found a fantastic caterer, and even sketched out several invitation designs, including the olive branch motif she loved. I put my heart into it, genuinely wanting her day to be perfect. But slowly, subtly, things began to shift. My suggestions, initially welcomed, started to be met with a dismissive wave or a tight smile. Oh, that's a bit much, don't you think, Clara, or that's not really my vision. If I offered a different idea, she'd often shoot it down, only to discover a similar concept a week later and present it as her own brilliant insight. I'd learned to let it go, to pick my battles, but the pattern was exhausting. It felt less like collaboration and more like I was a free consultant whose ideas were only good if she could claim them. Then came the incident with the dress. Bethany had found a stunning, but very expensive, gown. Our parents were covering most of the wedding costs, but the dress put her significantly over budget. She called me in a panic, crying about how it was the only dress for her. I had just received a bonus from a major corporate event I'd pulled off, and without much thought, I offered to cover the difference. It was a substantial amount, nearly $3,000. Oh, Clara, you're a lifesaver, she'd wept, promising to pay me back as soon as she could. I didn't expect to see the money again, but I wanted her to be happy. That detail mattered later. A few weeks after the dress drama, I noticed a distinct chill. Family gatherings where the wedding was discussed would suddenly grow quiet when I entered the room. Bethany would talk animatedly with our mother about bridesmaids' dress colors, then abruptly change the subject when I sat down. She started referring to my bridal party or my inner circle in conversations, a subtle exclusion that stung. I tried to brush it off, telling myself it was just pre-wedding stress, that brides got overwhelmed. But the truth was, I felt like I was being slowly edged out, like a character written out of her own sister's story. The final straw before the uninviting email came during a family dinner at our parents' house. My aunt, always a little too blunt, asked Bethany. "So, Clara, what do you think about the floral arrangements? You're the expert." Bethany, without even looking at me, waved her hand dismissively. "Oh, Clara has her own ideas, but I'm going for something much more classic. She tends to go a bit dramatic." The implication was clear. My professional I was somehow inferior, my taste too loud. I felt my face flush, but I just took a slow sip of water, forcing a neutral expression. My mother shot me an apologetic glance, but said nothing. That was when I realized Bethany wasn't just subtly undermining me, she was actively trying to diminish my presence, my contributions, my very identity, in front of the people who mattered most. The email from Mark, then, wasn't a shock in the way a sudden tragedy would be. It was the logical, painful conclusion of a pattern I'd been ignoring for too long. My first instinct was to call Bethany, to demand an explanation, to rage. But something stopped me. Her silence, the cold formality of Mark's message, spoke volumes. She didn't want a confrontation, she wanted me gone, cleanly and without fuss. And I suddenly understood why. I was too much. Too capable, perhaps. Too present. I was the older sister who had always been there, and now, for her biggest day, she wanted to be the only one. She wanted to be the center of attention without any perceived competition, even from her own sister. I closed my laptop, the screen reflecting my own stunned face. $3,000 for a dress, countless hours of free consulting, and years of unwavering support, all culminating in a polite dismissal. A wave of bitterness washed over me, but beneath it, a tiny spark of defiance flickered. I wouldn't beg. I wouldn't plead. I wouldn't even respond to Mark's email. Instead, I opened a new browser tab. My fingers, still trembling slightly, typed Italy solo travel. My initial plan for the money I'd saved was a down payment on a small condo. But as I scrolled through images of sun-drenched Tuscan vineyards and the sparkling Amalfi Coast, a new vision began to form. Why should I spend my hard-earned money making someone else's dream come true, only to be cast aside? My own dream, my own fairy tale, felt far more urgent. I had always yearned to experience Italy, to immerse myself in its beauty, its history, its food. Now was the time. I spent the next 2 weeks meticulously planning. This wasn't just a vacation, it was an escape, a reclamation, a carefully designed personal event. I booked a small, charming villa in Tuscany for a week, complete with a cooking class focused on fresh, local ingredients. Then, a few days in Rome to soak in the ancient history, followed by a dramatic finish on the Amalfi Coast, staying in a cliffside hotel overlooking the turquoise sea. I researched local markets, found a reputable guide for a private tour of Pompeii, and even scheduled a professional photo shoot in Positano, just for myself. I wanted to capture the beauty, the joy, the freedom. It was a conscious act of self-love, a counter-narrative to the rejection I had just experienced. I told my parents about my trip a week before I left. My mother, who had been trying to delicately ask why I hadn't RSVP'd to Bethany's wedding, looked relieved and then concerned. "Italy? Alone? Are you sure, honey?" My father, ever practical, asked about the cost. I simply said, I need a change of scenery. And yes, I'm sure. I didn't mention Bethany's email. It felt too raw, too humiliating to articulate. I just said I felt like I needed a break, and it was a trip I'd always wanted to take. My mother, seeing the quiet determination in my eyes, didn't press further. She just hugged me tight. The day Bethany's wedding was supposed to happen, I was not in a stuffy banquet hall in suburban Maryland. I was sitting on a sun-drenched terrace in a Tuscan villa, a glass of crisp local white wine in my hand, watching the golden light spill over rolling hills. The air smelled of cypress and wild herbs. Earlier that day, I'd spent hours in a cooking class, learning to make fresh pasta from scratch, my hands covered in flour, a genuine smile on my face. It was messy, joyful, and entirely mine. I took a photo of my perfectly imperfect pasta and sent it to my best friend, Sarah, with the caption, "Having my own kind of wedding feast." Over the next 2 weeks, Italy unfolded before me like a dream. In Rome, I stood in awe of the Colosseum, feeling the weight of history, a profound sense of perspective washing over me. I tossed a coin into the Trevi fountain, making a wish for clarity and strength. On the Amalfi coast, the vibrant colors of Positano against the deep blue sea were breathtaking. The private photo shoot, initially feeling a little self-indulgent, turned into an incredibly empowering experience. The photographer, a kind Italian woman named Isabella, guided me to poses that made me feel strong and beautiful, not just pretty. I wasn't posing for anyone else, I was capturing a moment of personal triumph. I sent a postcard to my parents from Positano, a stunning image of the colorful houses cascading down the cliffside. I wrote about the beauty, the food, the kindness of the people. I didn't mention Bethany or the wedding, but I ended with, feeling incredibly happy and refreshed. This trip was exactly what I needed. I knew my mother would read between the lines. I knew she'd understand that I was okay, more than okay, in fact. When I returned home, tanned and invigorated, I learned a few things. Bethany's wedding, according to Sarah, had been fine. Not spectacular, not terrible, just fine. Sarah, who had attended, mentioned that Bethany had seemed a little preoccupied and that my absence had been noticed by several family members. My mother later confided that Bethany had been annoyed that I hadn't called or texted her, especially after her wedding. Annoyed. Not concerned, not apologetic, but annoyed that I hadn't chased after her. It confirmed everything I suspected. The most surprising development came a few weeks later. My aunt, the blunt one, called me. She had been talking to my mother, who had mentioned my trip. "Clara," she said, her voice softer than usual, "your mother told me you paid for Bethany's wedding dress. Is that true?" I hesitated, then confirmed it. "She never paid you back, did she?" she pressed. I admitted she hadn't. My aunt was quiet for a moment. "Well, that explains a lot. I always thought Bethany was a bit much, but to uninvite you after you did that, it's beyond the pale." She then told me she had decided to reevaluate some of her own financial support for Bethany, who had been expecting a generous wedding gift. I never did confront Bethany directly about the uninviting, or the dress money. There was no dramatic showdown. Instead, I simply changed the locks on my emotional door. I stopped answering her calls immediately, letting them go to voicemail. I declined invitations that felt like obligations. When she finally texted, months later, asking if I wanted to catch up, I replied, "Busy, but maybe another time." The olive branch motif that I'd designed for her wedding invitations, the symbol of peace and reconciliation, now felt ironic. I saw it on a small decorative plate in a shop window a few weeks ago. I didn't buy it. I just walked past, knowing that my own peace didn't depend on her invitation, or her approval, or her wedding at all. It was something I had found for myself, under the Italian sun.